On the 2nd of September 2017, itch.io was stormed with a game which would leave a mark on indie developers and YouTubers as a whole. A game released which used ideas hardly ever seen in video games and mocked one of the popular genres ever. If you don't know, this is Doki Doki Literature Club, a light-hearted dating sim visual novel with a small amount of mocking to early 2000s visual novel games. However, this game has a small twist which focuses on aspects of horror, absurd amounts of gore, and themes of suicide and self-harm. Over a period of 2 years, Team Salvato, consisting of Dan Salvato and 7 others, were video game designers and musicians similar in type to people like Concerned Ape, who you'll know from Stardew Valley, members of Team Salvato, who worked alongside Dan and around him to make this beautiful game. Dan took some inspiration from games like You and Me and Her, which is a visual novel game with a similar dark tone. I'm probably going to buy this game and review it later on, but as there's a 25 quid price tag, I'm probably going to wait for a deal, to be honest. During the creation of Doki Doki Literature Club, I was generally surprised that Dan Salvato did all of his own music, similar to people like Toby Fox. Generally, I wouldn't really care, but it's just so impressive as these songs can be so catchy and fun, and I normally don't enjoy a lot of music soundtracks, but this one generally bangs. I'll try to play some music, but I'm not sure if it'll affect the video or not, so depending on copyright and fair use, then might have some in it. Dan gave information that Doki Doki was a mimicry of visual novel games in a pseudo-Japanese setting, meaning a false Japanese setting. However, was meant to be a love letter to visual novel games and not a full mockery. There's a few other things about the game I would like to explain to some viewers who may know less on Doki Doki Literature Club. There is a re-release of Doki Doki Literature Club, which is DDLC+, which gives access to some content I'll explain later on in the video, as it's vital to give some of its own information, as it gives access to extra music and backgrounds, as well as a few other things, and also giving access to consoles and Switch to have access to the game, which was kind of cool. The protagonist is you. Who would have thought? A primarily male character who wants to join a club and strives to fit in and gain relationships romantically or platonically with the 4 other characters. The protagonist generally has 4 options of choices through every act, and this depends on every character. Sayuri is the first girl you'll meet and is a longtime friend of the protagonist, who is also giddy and playful and the vice president of the literature club at their high school. Sayuri seems to want the protagonist to make friends and join a club, and one of her ideas is to join her club. Sayuri is generally the nicest member and the peacekeeper of the literature club. Monika is the president of the literature club, and pretty much the most popular girl who is nice to seemingly everybody. She's preppy and independent, and generally strives for attention with some certain poses. Monika is the more forgettable member, who is often left out during parts of the story and replaced by others. Monika also has the most Americanized, westernized kind of name, which is kind of the mimicry of the pseudo-Japanese setting. Yuri is the 3rd member of the literature club and is quite quiet and generally a bookworm, which is an alternative to the loud and outgoing other members. Yuri also seems to be a perfectionist who adores the idea of surrealism, the idea of a release of the unconscious creative mind, for example a dreamlike state. She's extremely attached to the protagonist but too afraid to ask them out or talk to them, and attempts to hide her feelings during her poems across the game. Natsuki is the youngest member, who is a seemingly angry character who likes manga and anime, however is a cutesy character who loves baking and dressing in pink, and is generally outgoing and tries to be a more adult-like person. She generally writes awkward poems which nobody understands, however these poems end up being quite dark or cute depending on Natsuki's mood. She's the most relatable character due to her vast amount of cultural relations such as games and manga, which I think makes her the best kind of member because she's generally the one that everybody seems to like. I would generally like to know who everybody's favourite member is. As the Literature Club, please comment down and I will like and comment if I see any interesting points of characters and stuff. The story for Doki Doki Literature Club isn't set into acts, but it's better if it is. The game opens with a protagonist waking and setting off to school. He is shortly met by Sayori, the boy's annoyingly cheerful best friend, who starts to beg him to join a club to make him less introverted. This leads to the boy being convinced during his day to join the literature club, where he meets Natsuki, Yuri and Monika, who are all excited for a boy to participate in club activities, this being poetry, books and reading them all out. The game continues and the protagonist slowly gets to know the girls, where he can choose to meet a few of them. You learn new things about each girl, like Natsuki liking manga and Yuri loves reading. This pretty much concludes Act 1, as it ends with the club having the idea to join the upcoming school festival and reading poems and stories. This act generally sets up the characters for the player to choose who they wish to date or connect with more. Act 2 generally begins with similar things, acting as more as a setup for character development, however shortly changes after Sayori confesses that she's suffering from depression and also confesses her undying love for the protagonist. The protagonist is able to respond and reciprocate the love or ignore her fully. However, it doesn't end there. Sayori's poems, which are usually sweet and full of joy, turned dark and morbid, with the poem explaining that she feels that someone is in her head and she wants it out. Sayori leaves, going home. However, when she doesn't pick up the phone, the protagonist runs over with the frightening sight of Sayori's lifeless corpse hanging from a rope. Sayori had ended her own life, and we just watch as she lays there. The screen shortly fizzes out as the protagonist and viewer questions if they could have saved Sayori. Then it stops. The game, I mean. It just stops. The player is soon transported back to the main menu, with their save unknowingly removed and deleted from the entire system. If you start the game again, the game starts as per usual, however, what Sayori's text is now unreadable. The game then glitches and resets again. Sayori is now absent, and any previous scenes with her are replaced or removed entirely. This leads to things like Monika inviting the protagonist into the club rather than Sayori, and a few other weird things, like Yuri being depressed and self-harming herself, and Natsuki's neck breaking. Other things happen like glitches, however previous choices are now gone and only favour Monika. Once the protagonist reaches the festival again, Yuri shows a poem which cannot be read. Later on she confesses her love for you. Ah, look at you, who has a crush. She then stabs herself repeatedly again and again and again. Due to this glitch, you sit there watching her body rot and deform till Monday morning, when school opens again, when Natsuki pukes and flees at the sight of you and the body. Monika spawns and deletes the character files of Natsuki and Yuri, resetting the game again. The game opens forcefully to a room very blank, with Monika sat in front of you, explaining she's aware what she is, and how she is powerful in her world and erased all the others for you, saying things like how she made Sayori more and more depressed, and making Yuri more clingy and intentionally less likable to most people. She wanted to be it, and only it, and it was done by any means necessary. Monika will talk to the player and remain till the player does one act and remove her from the game's files. The game, upon deletion, will reset and open up with a glitch and panic from Monika as she's deleted, screaming at the player before apologizing and resetting the game with herself deleted from it entirely. The game finishes soon after this, with 3 endings I'll explain in a later section. If you want to have a further explanation into the story, you can skip to the 3 sections. I'll put some timescales and stuff. Generally, if you haven't played this game, then you really should. It's free on Steam and costs around £10 on most consoles and the Switch. It's a bit slow, and if you're not into the format of visual novels, it may feel like a drag, but the climax on Monika being something intelligent feels dead set out of like a Kubrick movie. The game's got plenty of choices and is quite funny if you're actually reading the text along with that. The game never fails to get a jump or a scare out of me, with some of the darker scenes in the game, like Sayori's hanging. That took a minute. There's a few problems with the game, however I would like to explain them later on after this section, so if you already know the story, please skip to the time skip here. The first ending we will be covering is the neutral or bad run, depending how you see it. Straight after Monika deletes herself, the game will appear normal and Sayori will speak to the player, thanking them for deleting Monika. For those who don't know, Sayori shouldn't know this, so Monika helps break into the game and realizes any character who falls into the presidential role will become self-aware and freak out. Because of this, Monika deletes everything again. As the credits roll, Your Reality is played on the piano, but what is confirmed to be Monika's actual voice in the game. The final thing the player sees is the thank you note for playing the game given by Monika. This ending is a very dark one, but if the player deletes Monika knowing she's corrupted in the first act, Sayori will have a panic attack, screaming please make it stop, then forcing the game to come to a close. If the player reopens the game again, an end screen is shown with a greyed out Sayori hanging around in the room. Apparently, after 10 minutes, a message written by Sayori can be seen which says, now everybody can be happy, but I didn't go that far into the research. It did actually turn out to be true, but it's very hard to see what it actually says. This ending goes similar to the other ones, so if you don't know the basics and skipped, I ain't recapping again. Sayori gains knowledge, and instead of having a mental crisis, she thanks the player for trying to make all of the Literature Club members happy. This is due to the player doing everything in the game, and I may explain that in a further detail later though. The credits roll and images roll of your fun time and all the things that you did to help out the Literature Club. The developer then gives you a thank you note which contains a basic summary and info of stuff I used for this video, like all the stuff that he created and did. The game as a whole was a passion project and an amazing inspiration for horror indie devs and indie devs as a whole. The 3 endings that are possible show the amount of work and thought, and I barely even started to talk about some of the things possible that the game does. For many, it may be a drag, but if you read and watch, Doki Doki opens you up to an entire world of games. The next portion of the video is going to be an overall presentation on how the game is and some of the updates that the game did, e.g. Doki Doki Plus. There are very few bad things about Doki Doki Literature Club. However, one of the main flaws is with the ending itself and how complicated and unwelcome they are to newer players and may need explaining, which people like me will offer. Along with that, the game is an unusual format, that being a visual novel, that some are extremely unfamiliar with, and this may deter some people from playing the game. I generally have a negative point for certain fans who ruin the game by making stupid, not safe for work content, but I can't really stop them from doing that. To start quickly, for those who don't know what it is, Doki Doki Plus is just a re-release for consoles and PC, which is easier to command when doing certain things. It also has extra DLC which shows how the Literature Club was set up and how they all became friends. I'm probably not going to cover this as it's extremely strange and I'm not sure how true it is, as according to the emails in the game, it's a controlled environment where Monika isn't aware of her existence, but this gives the idea of, it kind of gives an idea of how they met, and it's not sure if it's true or not. I may do a short video on if anybody wants it, but I'm not sure right now. Other than that, Doki Doki Literature Club Plus is a genuine, like, Dan wanted something fresh and easier to pay for instead of, and it's reasonable for people to pay for it than getting the free version, as you get special things like music and all these uncovered things that you can use and make your own games for yourself, like mods, and it's kind of fun. I just wanted to outline how detailed and cool the endgame is when Monika has deleted everything but her, as you can talk to Monika and have full conversations which she will remember herself. I know it's just some complex coding, but there's things like her knowing the date and being scared that you'll leave if you come back to after a month or so. It's like the subtle things you won't think of too much, but it can be really sweet. And I think it's my favorite if, like, you exit the game without warning. She has a panic attack and starts crying if you come back when you come back, and it's generally the main thing that made me upset about Monika, because yeah, she's evil, but she's scared and corruption, and it's saddening, but I can believe that she isn't one of those good bad guys, but she isn't bad fully itself. Sorry to break things a little, but I'm currently trying to host a competition for LEGO gamers. If you enjoy playing any sort of LEGO game, then please DM me on Twitter at LegoAlfie or on Discord on my server. We will be trying to speedrun LEGO games every single week and kind of have fun with it, and it should be something that everybody can be access to and have fun with it. I'm not currently sure if it's going to happen, but if anybody's interested, then please join. Thank you for listening, and please enjoy the rest of the video. Doki Doki has some very interesting music choices, as many of them are the exact same song but with different instruments playing them. I will make a table showing what each instrument means and what it means to the person. The final music note I would like to mention is Monika's final song that she sings to you. It's beautiful and shows Monika's love for the protagonist. If you haven't listened to it, please go ahead, because it's amazing, and it's kind of like a rendition of the final scene, but it's still really, really good. This part of the video may be dark or unsettling to certain viewers, your warning has been given. As being a horror game, Doki Doki Literature Club has a few elements of horror, if you didn't know. Some more upfront than others, and other parts include intense gore and unsettling visual content, including Sayori's poem before her death itself, as well as that Yuri's death is incredibly gory and unsettling to sit through. The surprisingly adds quite a lot to the game, more than you would suspect, as these sections seem extremely simple, yet accomplish a lot in its own way, illustrating like the pain of each character's suffer whilst in the game. I don't know if it's been noticed before, but each character dies in a way that correlates to their feelings, e.g. like Yuri getting stabbed in the heart as she's loved the protagonist, and Monika forces her to show the act of how mentally unequipped Yuri was with her feelings for the protagonist. And Yuri is also used in a simple way, as she hangs herself because she cannot come to terms with how she feels itself, putting herself to rest to stop the pain. Mods are probably one of the most major parts of DDLC's world entirely, and modders have been influenced to create a little game within itself, and this gave new life to the 8-year-old game and gives new meaning to the game as a whole. Some of my favourite mods include the one where Monika's can be influenced in the end game and you can talk to her a bit more freely, and some of these mods allow you to change how Monika looks and try and make her into what is basically an ideal girlfriend despite her murdering all your friends. But the mods itself can be really cool. Some of them I've seen lately have been AI, and this has just been kind of cool to go through, and you can always go through it and see some certain things that are cool. For a 7.5-year-old game, this one itself it has to be one of the best horror indie games ever, and has influenced many games to date, including Class of '09 and many, many more. If you have never played Doki Doki, I beg to attempt to play it. It's got some of the best characters ever, and they always feel so flushed out, and none of them annoy me, Yuri. The game is so masterfully created, and generally I was hoping to get a message from Dan, because I messaged him on Twitter, but I think he's busy with private family stuff, which I respect, but it deserves a lot more than it does already, because it's a really, really fun game. If you haven't, then go onto Steam and play it, because it's free, or you can buy the DDLC Plus, which gives you more content and is probably the better version to play. Other than that, please like and subscribe, and I hope you have enjoyed. Goodbye.
Can you hear me?